So our speaker today is my colleague Sarah, and Sarah is a senior librarian here at the Genealogy Center, and she's also our in-house DNA expert. And along with DNA, her areas of research interest include Indiana, the Midwest and Upper South, 20th and 21st century genealogy, and Eastern European research. So I will hand it over to her and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Kate, for that introduction. So today we're going to talk about DNA relationships explained and known relatives. I want to make clear that we are going to be talking about basically autosomal DNA today, and there are 5 companies, major companies that offer this testing, and those include Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA's Family Finder test, MyHeritage DNA, 23andMe, and Living DNA, which is UK-based. Some people who take the autosomal DNA test are only looking for their ethnicity estimate. And so some of your matches will have only logged in, looked at their ethnicity estimate, and logged out again. And so they didn't see you as a match to them, and they didn't know there were matches in general. And they probably are not going to see any messages that you send to them through the messaging service of the DNA company. So keep that in mind, that might be why some of your matches are not responsive to you, but there is, as you know, another part to the autosomal DNA test results, and that is the genetic cousin matches. And in my opinion, this is the more interesting and important part of the autosomal test. And that is really for 2 reasons. One would be that for adopted people, it helps them reconnect with their biological family. And 2, for people like myself who are not adopted, I am just interested in tracking my ancestors, growing my family tree, and so forth. And I can use the DNA test and the DNA matching to see who I match with, to connect up with some distant family members that I might not have ever met, and collaborate with them on our family research. And I can also perhaps unravel some family mysteries that I might have in my tree. So the list of genetic cousin matches, who would those people be? Well, in general, some of them are going to be known relatives to you if you are not adopted. And that is kind of the caveat there. So I'm not adopted. So people on my match list are, some of them are known relatives that I have asked to take a test for me. And others of them are known relatives who have just tested serendipitously. And they just, I didn't know they were going to test, but one day they showed up there. And having known relatives test can help you for sure. The other people on my match list are unknown to me. By that, I mean, I look at their name and I don't have a recognition of who they might be. But if I view their tree, sometimes I say, oh, okay, that's how they're related, because the common ancestors are right in their tree. Or if they don't have a tree on the DNA site, if they sent me some information about themselves, I might be able to place them on my tree. So again, some of them are unknown to me, that I've never met them. I don't know their names, but they are related to me in a known way if I'm able to access their tree or speak with them. Others of them could be adopted or have an unknown family member that ties into my tree. And of course, then there's the 5th to 8th cousins, which is the majority of my matches. I have about 30,000 5th to 8th cousins at Ancestry. This is a very distant level of matching. And those people are very distantly related to me through perhaps even unknown ancestors that I haven't traced back yet. So I don't have, on some of my lines, I don't know who my 5th great grandparents are. So if I don't know who they are, then I'm not going to be able to match up my tree with a DNA match. We might be matched at a part of the tree that neither of us have developed yet. Or I could not be related to those 5th to 8th cousins at all. I'm going to suggest that with your 4th cousin and closer matches, you probably could find a set of common ancestors with you, generally speaking. Now, there's lots of exceptions to that, but especially the 3rd cousin matches and closer. And we call a set of common ancestors that you have with your DNA match the most recent common ancestor couple, or the MRCA. This is the couple where your trees intersect. You both have this common ancestor couple that you inherited the same segments of DNA from. Some of the same segments of DNA from. We inherited some of the same and some different. And the DNA company detects those same segments of DNA and basically marks us as matches to each other. And it gives you a predicted relationship label based on how much DNA you actually share with the match. And locating the most recent common ancestor couple is the key to understanding your exact genealogical relationship to the match and furthering your understanding of your tree and their tree. Now, how can you locate this most recent common ancestor couple? Now, I'm just kind of skimming the surface here, and there's a lot that I'm leaving unsaid, but basically, one of the best ways is if they do have a tree and you look at their tree and you see the common ancestors listed on that tree. Obviously, that's too easy, and a lot of people, you don't have that luxury to look at their tree. So perhaps you look at their tree and you see a common surname, but you don't see the name of an actual ancestor that you recognize. So you could research their tree a little more around that common surname and see if you could find the common ancestor. If they have a very small tree, but it's big enough that you can possibly get somewhere on it, you could start building a tree yourself. And I would suggest doing that for people that are closer matches with you, that you just start building their tree yourself. You can contact your match for information. This is not suggested if you're adopted, because normally if you contact somebody and say, hey, I'm adopted, how do you think we're related? They will say, whoa, 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 I don't know anything about any adoption, and I don't want to be involved in that. But since I'm not adopted, there's really no problem with me contacting matches. I don't care if I spook them or whatever, but you do want to be careful in the way you word your connection with the match, that you want to send them a message that would encourage them to reply to you. You can always Google your match's names and possibly find them listed in a obituary of their parent or grandparent, and that would help you build your match's tree. And again, with the 5th to 8th cousins, you may never locate a common ancestor couple. It might be too far back in the tree, or you might possibly be unrelated, meaning that maybe you're from a people group such as Ireland, like the Irish from Ireland, and all the people in Ireland have this small piece of DNA in common, and that might be why you're a 5th to 8th cousin with a lot of people. That is a possibility with those very distant matches. So here's an example of how you could try to build a tree and figure out how you are matching with a DNA match. So this is Bill, and he's my 1st to 2nd cousin. You can see that's the relationship label, 517 centimorgans, which is quite a bit of DNA. And let's say that Bill does have a tree, and I could just look at it and see that his mother and my grandmother were sisters, and Helen Willison is my grandmother and C. Willison is his mother. But let's say for a second that he didn't have a tree, and I couldn't find that information out from looking at his tree. Maybe he does have a slightly uncommon name, and I can Google him, and I find an obituary of one of his parents, and it gives enough information that I can then go and search on Ancestry or Family Search or an online genealogy site and find the marriage of his parents, find out who their parents are, and place this C. Willison in my tree. So even if Bill doesn't have a tree, I might be able to figure out who he is and just trace it myself and place him in my tree. And you can see there that Jason Willison and Jessie Lepper, my first great-grandparents, are the actual most recent common ancestor couple in this case. They have Helen and they have C. Willison as 2 of their children. Helen's my grandmother and C. Willison is Bill's mother. So Bill is actually my first cousin once removed. And I just quickly kind of built that tree for him and myself and located the common ancestor couple. Back to the match page. The match page, if you are looking at it and you haven't changed any of the settings, it will be arranged showing the closest matches to you at the top of the page and the furthest away matches at the very bottom of the page. And again, those will be the 5th to 8th cousins. So you can see here, and it is arranged in descending order. So you can see my top match there listed is AA, and then we go on down from there to MJ, Allen, and so forth. So your match list will be arranged the same way, and you really should concentrate on the top matches first. Now, the DNA company is going to give you some hints about how you might be related to this match. And they give you 2 different types of hints. The first one is they give you an estimated relationship label, which in this case is 2nd to 3rd cousin. And then they give you the amount of DNA shared with you, which is measured in centimorgans or percentage of DNA. And you can see it's 168 cms, which is the abbreviation for centimorgans. So that estimated relationship label, you need to realize that this is not an exact relationship, but it's a prediction based on the amount of DNA shared. And sometimes the company will use the age of the match compared to your age. You want to never assume that the predicted relationship is correct. It is a ballpark estimate, and you have to investigate on your own to confirm the exact relationship. And you're going to see in a minute that 167 centimorgan match, there could be 20 different possible relationships between me and that match. 20. So we have to go through them one by one to figure out which one it is. So with that relationship label, there are company differences. Ancestry DNA and family tree DNA are both going to give you a range of possible options. And I like this. I think it definitely lets the person know that this is a gray area, that there are multiple possible relationships. Now, the other 2 companies, MyHeritage and 23andMe, have a different philosophy. And I think they think that it's most helpful to the user that they give you one probable relationship. And so that's what they do. They display what they consider the most probable relationship. And they don't make it clear that this is basically a guess on their part. Remember that they cannot know how you are related to a match. They can only predict based on the amount of DNA you share and the ages of the matches. So I would say ignore those probable relationship labels at 23andMe and MyHeritage. Use them as a ballpark estimate, but you have to investigate the relationship yourself, ruling in and out potential relationships. So the amount of DNA shared is measured in centimorgans, which is abbreviated cm, and this is the unit of measurement for DNA. The more centimorgans you share with somebody, the more closely related you are with them. 23andMe will give you a percentage of DNA shared, but you can convert this to cms if you would like. Also, Ancestry and MyHeritage will give you a list of possible relationships. You need to click on the relationship label to get this list. If you have a match at Family Tree DNA and 23andMe, those companies don't give you this list in a nice fashion like the other 2 do. So you're going to have to go to a third-party tool to figure out what the possibilities for that relationship could be. So one of the main tools is called the Shared Centimorgan Project, and this is in your handout. You have the link to that project and the website that you need to go to. So since SF is a match of mine in Ancestry DNA does have a list of potential relationships. And so I click on the 2nd to 3rd cousin relationship label, and it opens up to this new window where it shows me the potential relationships. And here's where I say there's 20 different relationships that this person could be with me. You see that? This is a probability chart, and it is telling you that 55% of the time, it could be one of these top 5 relationships. These are equivalent relationships. All of the relationships listed here under 55%. Any one of them could be the right one, and they're not in any sort of order. They're not in order of the most likely or least likely. there's really no significance to the order. 35% of the time, it could be one of these 4 relationships here. 5% of the time, it could be one of these relationships here. 3% of the time, it could be one of these relationships here. And then less than 1%, it could be one of these relationships at the very bottom. Now, the less than 1%, those are probably much less likely. But these others, they're all possible. And so somebody has to be in the 3% because it's basically this is basically math and statistics. And sometimes somebody has to be this lower level relationship here. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So we can do the same thing with taking this and putting it into the shared Centimorgan project. So this is the DNA Painter website. It's a website that has a free section and a paid section. And this tool, the shared Centimorgan project, is part of the free section of the website. You just go under tools at the top there and you'll pull up the shared Centimorgan project that looks like this. You can see the middle, that box there is where you're going to enter the centimorgans that you share with your match or the percentage that you share with your match. And then you will get a chart that looks something like this. This is very similar to what Ancestry just showed us. At Ancestry, you remember the top probability was 55%. And at Shared Centimorgan Project, it's 52%. So that's really the difference. There's going to be slight differences among the percentages, but it's basically the same probabilities, just arranged slightly differently using slightly different data to get to the probabilities. So if I keep telling you that this is not the exact relationship, how do you determine the exact relationship? Well, they're both going to get you to a ballpark area. So SF, we know, has to be around a second to third cousin with me. And so I can look, a second cousin shares the same first great grandparents with me, and a third cousin shares the same second great grandparents with me. So that's where I'm kind of going to be looking, is at my second great grandparent couples and my first great grandparent couples. But otherwise, you're going to have to view trees or build trees. You're going to have to maybe do some genealogical and biographical research on the match. You're going to look at shared matches to see which side of the family it could be on and how this person matches to your other known family members. And you might possibly contact the match. But like I said, that's not really recommended for adoptees as your first step. So you want to do a lot of other work before you do that. And be very careful how you approach a match if you're adopted. Now, getting used to what the relationship labels really mean is one thing that you ought to do. So I included several cousin charts in your handout today. And so these are showing you how you do relate to your relatives. This is showing you exactly who a second cousin might be and exactly who a third cousin might be and so forth. And the removed, it does show you the removed cousins as well. You are over on the left. And so you could go up the tree here from me to my parents, to my grandparents, to my great grandparents. Then I come down this side. This is a sibling of my grandparent, is my great aunt or uncle. First cousin once removed is their child, and a second cousin is right here. So this is who my second cousin would be. And then again, going up to my second great grandparents and coming down this side over on the far right, you can see who my third cousin is. They descend from a sibling of my great grandparent. There's another cousin chart here. This one might be more to your speed, or it might not be. This one will show the more distant relationships. And basically, you are accessing across the top row your own relationship to the common ancestor. And then down the side on the left, you're putting in the matches relationship to your common ancestor. And then you're meeting in the middle, let's say here, and this person would be a fourth cousin twice removed to you. Maybe this cousin chart speaks to you more than the other one does. So you can feel free to use either one that might work for you. This one also is similar to the other two, but this one does show half relationships over on the left-hand side here. So if you have a lot of relatives that had children with more than one spouse or more than one partner, then you'll have more half relationships that you need to decipher. And this chart will help you do that. Now we're ready to start identifying and studying the matches to known family. Why are we doing this? Well, it's good to practice on known family matches to help you build familiarity with the concepts that we've just been talking about. You already know your relationship to these people if they're a known relative of yours. And you can do checking of the centimorgans to make sure that those are going to add up properly to the correct relationship as far as you know it, genealogically speaking. This provides you with more experience to tackle identifying your known matches. And each broad relationship category shares approximately the same range of DNA with you. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. I like to use this chart. This is a chart that is from the DNA Detectives Facebook group. And you can see that it's dated 2016. And so it is outdated. It's almost 8 years old at this point. And the DNA Detectives don't really use it anymore. I would say that if you are going to use this, you want to use it in conjunction with the Shared Centimorgan Project, and always double check. And this chart does not take into account outliers, which are people that you match with who are out of range in a category, maybe a little bit above the threshold or a little bit below the threshold on the chart. So like 95% of your matches are going to fall into the boundaries of this chart, but then a few of them are going to be a little higher or a little lower. So you can see here what I mean by that. The way you're reading this chart is you're saying, you look across the top there, centimorgans. So this is 1800 is the average centimorgans that somebody that's one of these relationships with you is going to share with you. 1300 to 2300 is the range. Occasionally, someone who's 1250, somebody who's 2350, so, a little bit above or a little bit below will also be one of these relationships here. So those would be outliers. And it's basically 25% of your DNA. And the relationships in this category include half sibling, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, double first cousin, grandparent, and grandchild. Those people with those relationships with you should share roughly this amount of DNA. So we are going to refer to this chart a little bit during our talk today, just to give us some general guidance. And one thing to keep in mind is, do you share the correct amount of DNA with your known close family members? I know quite a few people who have tested their full siblings or someone that they believed was their full sibling, and actually turned out to share only half the amount of DNA with that person than they should have shared, which basically means that that person is a half sibling, not a full sibling. So you do want to check your centimorgans and everything just to make sure you are matching close family members in the correct manner, or you might have unearthed some kind of family secret. So now we're going to go through the types of matches, and we're going to show you my different matches that I have to the kits that I manage and what those look like for each type of relationship. And these are known relatives to me for the most part. So we're going to start with, these are the broad categories of DNA matches. And the first one is self and twin. So most of us are not going to get this category of a match, but this is the highest category of match you can get, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Either you have tested yourself twice with the same testing company, so you're matching yourself, or you have an identical twin who has tested. Now, if you get this match and you say, I'm not an identical twin, nor did I test twice, then you need to call the testing company. That's always going to be my mantra, basically, with a perplexing high-level match. Just call the testing company. They can investigate who the other kit belongs to. They can look at the back end of their database, and they can advise you on what it means and what to do next, and they can fix any glitches that might have ensued. It would be unusual for there to be a glitch, but it could happen. Just a word about twins. So there's two types of twins. There's identical and fraternal. Only the identical twin is going to be showing up as a self twin because you basically share 100% or all of the same DNA with an identical twin. Now, obviously, you're not the same person. You have different interests, different lives, and so forth. But genetically speaking, you are 100% the same. And so the company can't tell the difference between the two of you. A fraternal twin is born on the same day as you are, shared the uterus with you, but is not identical with you and therefore is sharing the same amount of DNA as any other sibling of yours would. And so a fraternal twin will show up in your sibling category. Okay, probably many of us have had a parent-child match, and this is the next highest match that you would have. And this is ancestry DNA. It's telling us that it would be more than 3,300 centimorgans. Someone in this category is a parent or a child. If the match is your parent, it will specify whether it's your mother or your father. So in this case, ancestry is saying that they will differentiate mother and father for you. And I believe they do that by birth date and then by gender. So if an older man is matching with me as a parent-child, he has to be my father. He's a man and he's older than me. He can't be my son. That's really the only other option. So DA is my father. You can see him there, and I added his picture so you would know what he looks like. Cute little picture of him in a bow tie. They're saying that he's my father, and on his account, I show as his daughter, which is exactly what it should be. At the other testing companies, you can see that Family Tree DNA is calling me. So this is from my dad's account. It's saying that I'm either his parent or child. At MyHeritage, this is my account looking at him. It's saying he's either my father or my son. And at 23andMe, they have been able to determine, I think again by age and gender, that I have to be his daughter because I'm a younger female that is matching to him in that parent-child category. Now, because we're practicing with DNA Painter and with the Shared Centimorgan Project, we can take the centimorgans from any of the DNA companies, but this happens to be Family Tree DNA, where we share 3558 centimorgans, and we can put it into the Shared Centimorgan Project there, and we can see that it does say 100% parent and child. There is one other possible relationship that is also noted as parent and child with the DNA companies, and that again involves identical twins. If your biological parent is an identical twin, then that person who is your aunt or uncle will show up as your parent child because the company can't tell the difference between your parent and their identical twin. Similarly, if you have tested and you are an identical twin with somebody else, your identical twin's children, even though they are your niece and nephew, will show up as your child, your parent child again, because the testing company can't differentiate between you and your twin. So again, call the DNA company with any questions or for support if you have an unusual parent-child match that you don't understand. And here's a little bit of I like to visualize things, and maybe you do also. So I've drawn you a lot of charts in this program today. So this is our first little chart that I drew. It's just showing you the identical twin situation again. So let's say you are on the left-hand side there. Your dad is an identical twin. Your grandma and grandpa are the parents of those twins. That's the most recent common ancestor couple. And your dad's identical twin is Bob. Bob also has a child. Her name is Veronica. She's your first cousin, and Bob's your uncle. Now, because Dad and Bob are identical, if the four of you all tested at the same DNA testing company, your dad would show up as your parent-child. Bob would also show up as your parent-child. And on Veronica's test, your dad would show up as a parent-child and Bob would show up as a parent-child. So basically, the testing company wouldn't be able to figure it out. And then you and Veronica as first cousins would actually show up as close family because you're more closely related than a traditional first cousin because your dads are identical twins. So isn't that fun? I've actually seen this before. Somebody came in and showed me their results, and they said, oh, this is because I have an identical twin. And I said, ooh, this is fun. So yeah, it's interesting. All right, the next relationship that you would have, the next person that you're the most closely related to would be your full sibling. At Ancestry DNA, this person will be called your full sibling. So if you have a half sibling at Ancestry DNA, they're not going to be called a full sibling. They'll be in a different category further down the list. So there are a couple of exceptions to this, and we'll get to that in a minute. But most of the time, this is your full sibling. This is my dad's sister, shown from my dad's kit. So MJ Allen is my dad's sister. It's calling her his full sibling. So we know that the two of them are full siblings. We can also look at the shared centimorgan range of 2,200 to 3,300, and she's sharing 2,600. At the other companies, we can see that MyHeritage calls my dad my aunt's brother. And at 23andMe, they call her my dad's sister. So you can notice that they're not using the word full, but that's pretty much what they mean, especially when we look at the amount of DNA that they share. Now we can take this amount of DNA shared at 23andMe, 47.98%, and put it into the shared centimorgan project. And what we actually get is a puzzling result. It says 100% parent-child, but she's his sister. There is a note, and you always want to read all the information on the page, especially when you have a puzzling result. It's a note that says if you have CM amounts from 23andMe, these will basically count some areas of the DNA twice. This could mean sibling relationships show as parent-child in this tool. So because this is a 23andMe match, there's no problem here. This is just a weirdness where 23andMe is counting the DNA a little differently, and it shows differently on the shared centimorgan project, but it's fine. The other sibling relationships that might show up as a full sibling include an interfamily pregnancy where your parents are closely related to each other, which would be incest, like a father who impregnates his daughter, a grandfather who impregnates his granddaughter. This is going to really cause your DNA relationships and your DNA results to be unusual. And if you suspect that this is going on with your DNA matches and this happened in your family, you might want to call the DNA company to get some advice on what to do next, how to interpret everything, and where to go for resources if you're needing counseling or counsel about this disturbing development. The other type of sibling that could show up as a full sibling is actually called a 3/4 sibling. And let's go and see what that would be. Some companies are going to call put a 3/4 sibling into a full sibling category, and that's going to include Ancestry, but some of the others might put it in a half sibling or a close family category. But a 3/4 sibling is where one of your parents, doesn't matter which one, has a child with your other parent's full sibling. So I'm going to just spin an example here. There's many other different ways that this could happen, but let's just say that your mom and dad got married and had you, and then they got divorced. Then your mom and your dad's brother fall in love, decide to get married, and they have some children. Those children are more related to you than a half sibling. They are your half sibling because you share a mom with them. But on your dad's side, you're first cousins because your half sibling's father is your uncle on your dad's side. So they're a half sibling and a first cousin, and you kind of add that together, mash it around, and it becomes this 3/4 sibling is what we call it in the DNA world. This is not incest. You still have two different sides of your family. You have a definite father's side and a definite mother's side. It's just where one of your parents is involved with two different siblings on the other side of the family. And you have a sibling that is a 3/4 sibling. The next category down is close family to first cousin matches. This is what it's called at Ancestry DNA. This category brings in a lot more complexity. Most of the categories that we've previously seen, there was only like one possible relationship or maybe two, and it was pretty obvious what it would be. In this category, you can see that there are 5 possible relationships: aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, grandparent or grandchild, half sibling, double first cousin. And this person is sharing approximately 1,300 to 2,200 centimorgans. And that's quite a wide range of centimorgans as well. These are all equivalent relationships. That's the first thing you need to know. Just because the aunt relationship is listed first on that list doesn't mean that this is most likely to be your aunt. Could be any one of those. You can't eyeball it and just guess. You really have to figure it out through research, shared matching, process of elimination, communication, and more, if you have an unknown close family match. So with my close family matches, these are 2 known relatives of mine. This is an ancestry DNA. We have my aunt. I've talked about her. She's my dad's sister. There she is, Aunt Joanne. MJ Allen, and she's listed as a close family to first cousin match. She shares about 1,728 centimorgans with me. And then the next match is showing a niece from her aunt's account. So this is AA is the niece of the person whose account this is. And so that's showing a 1,776 centimorgan relationship. At the other companies, you can see that MyHeritage says that TA is an aunt or a grandmother. And those are under the probable relationships. And this is my dad's known aunt from his account. So TA is his aunt. TA at Family Tree DNA, you can see that they give the range of possible relationships. And I like that much better. They don't try to predict what it's going to be. They just tell you it could be one of these relationships and you got to figure it out. 23andMe, remember that they just kind of pick a probable relationship and they can be wrong. In this case, they were right. They predicted that MJ is my aunt and GM is my uncle. And here is my uncle GM. You can see a picture of him. And he's my mother's brother. And I share 21.99% DNA with him. And we can go to DNA Painter again and put that in, and it converts to 1,636 centimorgans. And it tells us that he's 100% grandparent, aunt, uncle, half sibling, niece, nephew, or grandchild. I have the arrow there pointing to some small print that you might not be able to read at your end, but I'm going to tell you, DNA Painter is not going to work so well if you have pedigree collapse or endogamy, or if you're related in more than one way with a match. So endogamy would be somebody who's of a Jewish background, a French Canadian background, an islander of some sort, like a Pacific Islander. You might have a lot of endogamy, an Amish or Mennonite person from an Amish or Mennonite background, where the community continues to marry into others in this a small community over and over and over again. And so sometimes those people are going to have kind of slightly different DNA matching results than the rest of us. I don't have any of those in my family, so I don't have any problem with using DNA Painter. There are 2 cousin relationships that this could also be in a close family category. That's double first cousins or a first cousin who is the child of your parents' identical twin. But your regular first cousin would not be in this category, the close family category. They'd be in another category that I'm going to call first cousin. So a double first cousin is actually going to be in the close family match category. And that is somebody where your dad and mom had you, and then one of dad's siblings married one of mom's siblings, and they had kids. That person is your double first cousin because they're a paternal first cousin and a maternal first cousin. And so they share about double the amount of DNA with you that a regular first cousin would share. And that's why they're in this close family category. And again, we already talked about Veronica, your first cousin, who is the daughter of your dad's identical twin. She also would be bumped up into this close family match category, even though she's just your first cousin. Sometimes people want to take a half-sibling DNA test. They have a person that they think is their half-sibling, they want to check it out, or they get a match at one of these DNA testing companies, and the other person maybe says, I don't believe that we're really half-siblings. I want to take a DNA test with a laboratory. So that's fine if you want to double check with a laboratory, a testing laboratory, you may certainly do so. This is the test that is very highly recommended for that. It's called Parabon affinity testing. And you can search for this on the internet. This is what it's called. You should be able to find it at Parabon's website. And we know that this test can accurately identify a half sibling. This is per the DNA Detectives Facebook group. All right, the next range is the first cousin range, and I'm going to have to get moving a little faster here. You can see that the range in the first cousin range is about from 575 to 1330, sharing an average of 900 centimorgans. It includes a first cousin, half aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew, great grandparent, great grandchild, or great aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew. So again, about 4 different relationships. They're all equivalent. You have to do research to figure out which one it is. This is what known first cousin range matches look like at Ancestry. RB is a known first cousin. He shares 1055 centimorgans. MS is also a known first cousin. She shares on the lower side 649 centimorgans. VB is my great aunt, so she's showing down there at 847 centimorgans. And NG is a half niece, so of my dad's. So this is from my dad's account here. And she's sharing 743. So all of these are in the right category for what they are, for their known relationship. And then we can see some first cousin matches at the other companies. MyHeritage is showing that I am the half niece of one of my great aunts. So that's not true. She's my great aunt, so I'm her great niece. So the probable relationship is wrong, and we had to basically throw that out and just do our own research to figure out what it is. 23andMe, same deal. They're saying that NG is a first cousin to my dad when she's actually a half niece. And here we can check some of these relationships at DNA Painter again. So the first cousin at 1055 centimorgans, it says he's 100% basically one of those relationships that we just talked about. Can't be anything else. MS, now I said she's also a known first cousin, and there's really nothing to worry about here. She's just on the lower end of the sharing for a first cousin. But you can see at DNA Painter, the first cousin relationship is down here under the 47% probability. And the 52% probability is half first cousin and a number of other relationships. If I had other reason to believe that MS might be a half first cousin, I could, keep researching that. But at this point in time, I have no reason to think that. And basically, statistically speaking, 47% and 52% are almost the same percent. It's about 50-50 that it could be a first cousin or a half first cousin. Now, I've been throwing around the terminology of half first cousins and half aunts and half uncles, and you may not know what this means either. I'm talking about genetic relationships here and not how you refer to family members. You probably don't go around talking to your first cousins and saying, oh, we're only half first cousins. That probably would not get you very far, would you? Some of your first cousins, they might feel slighted if you said that to them. But basically, a half first cousin is a child of your parents' half sibling. So in this first case, we've got grandma and grandpa. They get together. They have your mom who has you. And then grandma has another husband who has a child with him. And that is a half sibling to your mom. And her child is a half first cousin to you. You're only half related through one grandparent, which would be grandma. And you have different grandpas. On the other side, we've got grandpa and grandma get together and have dad. Grandpa has another woman that he has a child with. That would be your dad's half sister. And technically speaking, she'd be your half aunt because again, she shares one common relative with you, not 2. She shares grandpa with you, but not grandma. The next category down is what I'm calling the first cousin once removed range category. This is 215 to 650, average 450. The three relationships that are possible here are the first cousin once removed, the half first cousin, half great aunt and uncle, niece, or nephew. Now, these numbers bleed into the other categories. 650 could be a first cousin. So we already saw that. And 215 is going to also be possible for a second cousin. So there's going to be overlap, and it makes it much more messy to try to figure out who these people are once there are just multiple categories for the relationship to be in and just multiple possible relationships. Some of my first cousin once removed matches that you can see here. I have TA, who is a known first cousin once removed. I believe that this is one of my dad's first cousins that is matching me. And NG is my half first cousin, and she's sharing 369 centimorgans, which is still well within the range. At 23andMe, we have MM, who is a first cousin once removed. So 23andMe, remember, kind of guesses or projects what they think the relationship would be. And in the first case, they guessed right. With NG, they said she's my second cousin instead of my half first cousin. So they guessed wrong with NG. And what is a first cousin once removed? Well, it basically means the removed means that there is at least one generation difference between you and the match. So in this case, you've got your grandma and grandpa. We're going to say that they're the most recent common ancestor couple. They had two daughters, mom and your aunt. So they're the same generation. They're both children of your grandma and grandpa. You and your first cousin are the children of mom and aunt. And so your first cousins, you're also the same generation because you're both grandchildren of grandma and grandpa. Your first cousin has a child. That child tests. And to you, that person is your first cousin once removed. They're the child of your first cousin. They're one different relationship, one different generation than you are. So they're one generation removed from you is basically, and that's why they're called your first cousin once removed. There are other examples of once removed and twice removed on those cousin charts that I showed you. All right, let's move on to the second cousin range. Again, there's going to be a lot of bleed over here. See, the second cousin average 224 centimorgans, range 75 to 360. Second cousin once removed, and some of those relationships that are equivalent, 330 centimorgans to 215. 112 is the average. A lot of bleed over, a lot of crossover, but these are just general guidelines to look at. This is what Ancestry says your second to third cousin would be. And they're saying 90 centimorgans to 340, which is similar to what I just showed you. These are some second cousins of mine at Ancestry. WS and SR are definite second cousins. And AD is kind of a unicorn there. They're sharing as much DNA as my second cousins, but they are a known third cousin. So they're going to be a statistical outlier that we kind of were talking about. At MyHeritage, we have some known second cousin once removed, both Sean and Sherry. And you can see that 23andMe thought that this probable relationship was second cousin once removed, but they thought that this probable relationship was second cousin. So again, you just have to really check those and make sure that you know what the correct relationship is. So here's AD. Now remember I said AD is a little bit of a unicorn. But we take 225 centimorgans and we go ahead and we plop it into the shared centimorgan project. And 3% of the time, way down there at the bottom, 225 centimorgans could be a third cousin. We know this is a third cousin. And so basically, I just turned out to be in the 3% probability for this particular relationship. It's an abnormally high relationship for a third cousin. But I've seen AD's tree. I know some of the people that are listed here on the tree, and I don't have any suspicions that this is any other kind of relationship. Now, AD may come from an endogamous population, or one of her other parent might also be related to me, and that could be bumping up our centimorgans numbers. But you can see that our most recent common ancestor couple is my second great grandparents, William Graves and Cordelia Klein. and I come down from their daughter Dolly, and AD comes down from their son Asbury. And it goes down from there, and we're third cousins. Third cousin range, and now we're getting down to the bottom of the match list, and this is going to have much more. If you share 0 to 109 centimorgans with somebody, it could be a lot of different relationships besides third cousin and second cousin twice removed. But this is what your known first cousin and second cousin twice removed should share with you around this amount. I have a third cousin who's a known third cousin who shares 29 centimorgans with me. And I have a known third cousin, well, he's a second cousin once removed at MyHeritage, who shares 73 centimorgans with me. So when you start getting down at these low levels here, there's many possible relationships. And at MyHeritage, you can click on this right here, the estimated relationship, and you get kind of a probability chart, just like what you would see at DNA Painter. And it says parent's second cousin is 32% of the time. So this is saying that this is a fine amount of centimorgans to share for a second cousin once removed. Then you get down to the bottom of your list. You're down now at the 4th to 8th cousins. And it's really kind of the Wild West at this point. Some of these people, you might not share any DNA at all with a 4th cousin or a 5th cousin. They have a whole explanation for this at Ancestry, but basically they say determining exact relationships via DNA becomes less feasible the more distant the genealogical relationship is. Percentages of DNA shared between relatives at the 4th cousin level and beyond may signify any number of distant relationships. Basically, this is about where you're going to start running into a lot of difficulties. And the distant matches, and at Ancestry, they're called distant family, and they're called 5th to 8th cousins. You share 20 centimorgans or less with them. You may not ever be able to determine a relationship to these distant matches. You can evaluate your trees and their side and their tree, but it may not match up. I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to find the connection if it were me. Could be an unknown adoption, could be a false match, which is possible with these distant 5th to 8th cousins. And, could be any number of reasons why you can't figure out the relationship. I find that working with the 4th cousin matches and closer takes up all of my time anyways. I don't have any time to work on the 5th to 8th cousin matches. I hope this was helpful to you. And now I'm going to quickly show you one possible application of what we did today, using known matches to help place unknown matches on your tree. So this is EB. He's an unknown match to me. And when I contacted him, he informed me that he was adopted and did not know anything about his birth family. He's sharing 145 centimorgans with me. He's a second to third cousin, according to Ancestry DNA. When you get to the match page between you and a match at any one of the companies, you're going to see something that looks like this. It's going to say shared matches or matches in common or relatives in common. And you will see a list of people that match both you and EB, or you and the other match. So if I understand how I'm related to the shared matches, I can estimate a potential relationship with EB. Remember, EB is adopted and he has no idea who he could be, how his family might interconnect with mine. So the shared matches with EB, first of all, the top one is my father. So all of a sudden we know that EB is on my paternal side. Then we have SF, who is, I know who this is. Most recent common ancestor to me is George Brown and Sarah Kennedy. Then TW, most recent common ancestor to me is David Allen and Alice Brown. And SR, the most recent common ancestor to me is Jacob Allen and Melinda Allen. Are you seeing a pattern? There are people on this list that are named Allen and Brown. And so generally speaking, I know it's on my dad's side of the family. I know it's in the Allen Brown section of my tree. And I happen to have a marriage in my tree on my dad's side between an Allen and a Brown. And this is the couple here. This is my great-grandparents, David Allen and Alice Brown. And so EB, just based on those shared matches, is probably a descendant of this couple, David Allen and Alice Brown. Now, obviously, more research needs to be done, but just eyeballing it and looking at those shared matches gave me a lot of hints to go into this direction. And here's my tree, just so you can see. David Allen's parents are Jacob Allen and Melinda Allen, and Alice Brown's parents are George Brown and Sarah Kennedy. So this is the area of the tree that we're highlighting, and we think that EB, the adopted person, is on this line between the marriage between David and Alice. All right, I believe that that is the end, and we are going to go now to questions. So we have Diane who says, I have a first cousin match. I know him. It's 9% shared, 631 centimorgans across 18 segments. Is this normal for a first cousin? Yes. If you went to that, if you look at the handout, I have the green shared centimorgan project chart on there. You can look at the category for first cousins, and you can see that the range includes 631. It's on the low end, but it is there. Susan says, I've Googled names and don't find any parents or grandparents listed. Is there a special part of Google that you go to? No, Susan, I'm really kind of being real open-ended there when I talk about Googling your matches. If they have a really common surname, you're not going to be able to probably Google your matches and find out who they exactly are. But if you have some clues as to who they might be, and you do some creative Googling and searching online, different places, you could even try social media, do some like kind of online snooping almost. Sometimes you can find an obituary for a parent and grandparent that lists your DNA match, and it ties into your family. You start recognizing names and you say, oh, that's who this is. So that's what I did with that first example of my first cousin once removed Bill, but it doesn't always work. You're right. And then you have to kind of employ other strategies if that one doesn't work. Mary says, can you send or request a DNA test without purchasing the service? First of all, you can order a kit from any of those companies, and it has a fixed price, and it'll go on sale certain times of the year, like Mother's Day and Father's Day, Christmas time. There'll be sales, probably 4th of July. Like they try to have a sale on all the different holidays. And the cost was a fixed cost. Let's say it's like $69 for a DNA kit. That gets you your ethnicity results. It gets you a list of your matches. Now, you might not be able to view a lot of the tools at the DNA testing company without some kind of ongoing subscription. 23andMe and Ancestry are both kind of moving in that direction, where they're wanting you to have a subscription, an ongoing subscription to their services. But you can get the kit and you can see your basic results just for the price of the kit. You don't have to have an ongoing subscription. If you've already tested and you want to invite your family members to see your results, you can do that at Ancestry and MyHeritage in the settings. You can invite somebody else to look at your DNA results. You can also buy a gift kit for someone. If you don't understand how to do, like buy a gift for somebody, you might want to call the DNA website and ask them, how can I buy, a kit for my Uncle Joe for Christmas? And they will tell you how to do that and how it can get activated and that sort of thing. So that's what I would do if that's what you're doing. Valerie says, will the children of identical twins share more centimorgans than other first cousins? Yes, that's when they're bumped up into the close family category, while the regular first cousins are down in the first cousin category. So see that on the green chart. Is it common to have more centimorgans with a second cousin than a first cousin? No, it's not. I would say, are you genuinely sure that one of them is an actual second cousin and one of them is an actual first cousin, or are you just kind of guessing that of their relationship? No, look at the green chart. Second cousin is going to share on average 224 centimorgans, and a first cousin is going to share 900 centimorgans. That's the average. A half first cousin is going to share around 450 centimorgans. So maybe the person is actually your half first cousin instead of your first cousin. But if you want to email us, I think Kate can put that into the chat, and I can try to get more into what you're talking about. Leslie says, how is this different in dealing with Jewish family members due to endogamy? Now, I'm not Jewish, and so take what I say with a grain of salt. The people, the search angels that I have learned things from, and I have watched them work, and I've heard their suggestions to Jewish people, they have said that those top relationships like sibling, parent-child, first cousin, close family, those are not going to be affected by endogamy. So you're not going to be sharing, the amounts are not going to be too far off from a non-endogamous population. Where the endogamy starts showing up is around the second cousin level. And this is in general. So there may be some exceptions to this. And like I said, I'm not Jewish. Around the second cousin level, somebody that appears to be your second cousin could actually be your third cousin, based on the endogamy. So just kind of, that's around the area of your match list where things might start going wonky because of endogamy. Evan says, during slavery, families were separated multiple times on several plantations throughout the country. How do African Americans decide or figure out how a DNA match is related when there aren't any common ancestors in their tree? Now, again, you can see I'm not African American. So again, I'm just going to talk about what I've heard other experts say, and I'm not an expert in this, but I've listened to a number of programs and speakers on this topic. And what I believe they have said is, look for locations. Now, this is not always going to be helpful because the family may have sold slaves into different states, and slave families could have been split up into different locations. But if they were on the same plantation together, say in North Carolina, and this plantation was in the county of Granville County, North Carolina, one of the ways that you can try to connect up with your DNA matches is you notice that their family's from Granville County, North Carolina, just like your family is. So that would be a starting point to say, well, maybe they are related through a slave owning family in Granville County, North Carolina. But it is a more tenuous situation where you're trying to make connections without names, and it's harder. I believe we might have one program on, well, we have several programs on tracing African Americans back into slavery on our YouTube channel. I don't recall if they spoke about DNA at all, but you might look at our YouTube channel and see what you can find there. Jennifer says, what's the best way to manage DNA matches on multiple sites? Is there a way to merge them into one document to make it easier? Yeah, I would say, a lot of people do this with spreadsheets, Excel or another spreadsheet program. Some people do make notes on paper. I had a lady the other day who had done this. She had just made notes, like in a word processing program, and she had just listed all the people from the different DNA sites and how much DNA they shared with her and who the common ancestor couple was and how they descended from that couple. And so, yeah, there are different ways of doing it. I've heard of people doing it through Airtables. I believe the Family Locket website, and I don't know the name of, I don't know their exact website, but if you search Family Locket, I believe that will get you there. They have a lot of material on how to use Airtable to keep track of things, and I believe they keep track of their DNA matches in Airtable. So that would be another way to do it, but just whatever makes sense to you. Okay, Alina, is it possible to determine if a match is a false match when the matches shares 10 centimorgans and there are shared matches in ancestry? Blaine Bettinger speaks about this, and he writes about this on his blog. And again, I'm not an expert in this, but if you go to his website, which I believe is called the Genetic Genealogist, although I could be wrong about that. He has several articles, and he even gives a program or two on this if you ever get a chance to hear him speak. And he talks about small matches and the dangers of small matches and the assumptions that people make about their small matches. So he would be, if you get a chance to listen to him or read one of his blogs, he has some explanations of how to determine whether a match is real or not real, or kind of nebulous, not sure if it's real. Judy says, if you have a distant match, 20 to 40 centimorgans, and it's mostly one segment, does that mean we have a likely MRCA? Yes. If it's multiple small segments, like you say, you have somebody that is shares 20 centimorgans with you, and you can see that it's on 4 segments. That is 4 tiny segments that add up to be 20 centimorgans. Whereas if it says your 20 centimorgan match and you only have and you have 1 segment of DNA, that means the segment is actually 20 centimorgans long. And it is better to have longer segments in common with those distant matches. And it does make it more likely that you have an MRCA and you can possibly determine what it would be. Dixie says, and this is our last question, how many generations back can you use this DNA reliably to eliminate or verify a great-great-grandparent? Family Search has a long family line that I cannot reliably connect my great-grandfather to. Okay. If the person is, if you're searching for your great-grandparent, your great-grandfather's parents, then this type of DNA should be pretty accurate and pretty helpful. It wouldn't be as great for finding like a 4th great-grandparent's parents. But if it's your great-grandfather, that's pretty close to you. And so, yes, it should be possible. It may be hard. Feel free to send us an email if you want to explain a little more about what you're trying to do, and I can maybe give you some better pointers for your particular situation. But yes, good question. Thank you, Dixie. All right. Well, I think that's it.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for attending. Again, if you have any questions, or if you would like a copy of the chat from today's Zoom, please send us an email. I'll stick that in the chat, and it's genealogy@acpl.info. So we hope to see you on Thursday evening for our program then, and I hope everybody has a good day. Bye.
Bye.